It's time for Lefties Losing It, and let's start with Ana Navarro. She's not only one of the miserable mavens of The View, but she also shares her unpleasant and uninformed invective on CNN, where she dismisses certain opinions based on gender and race. How progressive.
Also, I want to respond to you saying that I was hyperbolic when I talked about a reign of terror.
Because that is hyperbolic.
No, it might be hyperbolic for you as a white man.
Oh, okay.
It's certainly not hyperbolic for me as a
racist.
Latino. No, I'm not being racist.
It's incredible to dismiss my opinion for being a white man.
No, I'm not dismissing your opinion. I am telling you that what the Latino community, the brown community in America.
Speak in one voice.
Okay, well, let me speak with my voice. I mean, you said I was being hyperbolic. Let me respond.
Racially, sure.
I'm not. You being a white man as an insult?
When you invoke it to dismiss my
being a white man as an insult?
When you invoke it,
do you think Latinos are living under circumstances that other people may not be right now in this country?
There she goes again, pretending every member of the Latino community is illegal and fearful of being deported. As for her being blatantly sexist and racist in that instance, well, it wasn't long before CNN host Abby Phillip was rushing to rescue Ana and defend her bigotry. Wonder if she'd do that if a man dismissed Navarro's opinion because of her gender and race.
I just want to make a point that, Brad, all she's saying is that her view of the situation is different from yours. I don't think that's an insult.
She basically said, I'm wrong because I'm a white man.
She just said, I see it differently. I see it differently from you, which is not an insult. It's not, and it's also not a racial insult.
Say what now, Abby? Nice attempt at gaslighting, but we just heard Ana being racial. It wasn't the difference in opinion that was ugly. It was the racist, sexist reason behind it.
As a white man?
Now let's go to Ana's View co-host, Sunonny Host, who exemplifies the left so beautifully, so unprincipled, so inconsistent, so utterly devoid of anything resembling a good faith argument. Let's see her go from claiming anyone who wants the Epstein list released is a reckless conspiracy theorist. That's when the Democrats were in power. But now that Trump is in power, well, she's had a dramatic change of heart. And let's thank Maisel Moore again for this superb clip.
People were dying for this information. There was some sort of list that everybody thought was going to come out, and who's on the list. What's important for us to note is we shouldn't be repeating names that are on the list, because just because your name has not on the list, but in the documents, just because your name is on the documents doesn't mean that you have done anything criminally irresponsible or illegal or civilly irresponsible.
Or that you were a client.
Or that you were a client. These documents, as I read them, only reflect Epstein's sexual assaults of women and his sexual behavior. So I think that...
And Ghislaine also?
And Ghislaine. And so being named in this suit does not equate to being accused of wrongdoing. And I think that is extremely important, because conspiracy theorists seem to not understand or enjoy facts.
Yes.
These are the facts.
There is a list. Trump's name is on the logs, the passenger logs of Epstein's aircraft at least 7 times. That's already been made public. I mean, of course, Trump is denying any and all allegations, but all of that information is out there. Why not just put it to rest and say, release the list?
And let's stick with the ladies of The View. Whoopi Goldberg is unhappy again. This time she's attacking her own, including Mark Cuban and even Barack Obama, who have advised the left, they've advised the Democrats to stop whining so much. Whoopi is outraged. She wants to keep whining incessantly.
Let me remind everybody who was out in the front lines marching when we had the giant marches that went on. It was the people. The people went out. They were not navel-gazing. It was older people who were saying, why are you touching my Social Security? It was not people whining. With much due respect to you both, I believe you are pointing the finger at the wrong person when you say Democrats.
And let's hear from Barack Obama, who's had a dramatic change of heart, almost Sunonny Host-like. He's gone from berating men, claiming that only sexism is stopping them from voting for Kamala Harris. Remember this?
And you're coming up with all kinds of reasons and excuses. I've got a problem with that because part of it makes me think, and I'm speaking to men directly now, part of it makes me think that, well, you just aren't feeling the idea of having a woman as president. And you're coming up with other alternatives and other reasons for that. That's not acceptable.
Gosh, I can't believe that didn't work. But now Barack Obama has had a change of heart. He's changed his tune. Here he is rooting for men on Michelle Obama's podcast. He explains that boys and men feel like they're not being valued.
And I would argue that some of the broad political trends we've seen, not just in this country, but around the world, have to do with this sense of, boys, men not feeling as if they are seen, feeling as if they count. Mm-hmm. And that then makes them more interested in appeals by folks who say, you know what, the reason you don't feel respected is because women have been doing this, or this group has been doing this, or that group's been doing this. And that is not that's not a healthy place to be.
Now, in the past, we've talked about Barbara Streisand blaming Donald Trump for getting fat. Her words, not mine. Rosie O'Donnell blamed the president for her drinking too much. And now we have actress Valerie Bertinelli getting on the internet to talk about her desire for alcohol and food. To give this Democrat some credit, she is a big Democrat. She even filmed herself voting for Kamala. How embarrassing. Now, to give her credit, she doesn't directly blame Trump for her online meltdown, but we all know who's to blame.
I want to drink. I want to numb it. I don't want to feel it. But my logical mind is like, no, you don't want to do that. You don't want to numb it. You know what will help you feel better is to just feel the feelings, get through to the other side, have a good cry. And yet I can't cry.
Now, the almighty LGBTQIA++ community is fracturing. This group that has enjoyed disproportionate power, disproportionate influence in recent years is splitting, with many in the LGB part, lesbians, gays and bisexuals, rejecting the excesses of the trans movement.
We are normal gays.
We are absolutely embarrassed by the insanity of queer ideology and are announcing our departure.
If you want to keep chugging along with the people who make everything about race, believe in thousands of genders, and transition children, be our guest.
If you stand for the separation between crazy and common sense,
and you no longer agree with the ideology of woke activism,
we are taking a stand by reposting, resharing, and refocusing our energy on us.
And let's see what happened when Ariel Scarcella, who you saw in that clip, attended Pride in New York and sought to have some sane, rational conversations. It didn't go too well. You see, the love and tolerance mob can't even tolerate a lesbian, a member of the LGBT community who is not in favour of irreversible trans treatments for children. Watch this.
They took away the procedures for people to be able to...
The Supreme Court just ruled on that.
On minors, yes, on minors.
You can no longer get gender-affirming care under 18 in Tennessee.
I agree with that, and I think a lot of LGBT people do, including a lot of my transsexual friends.
So what are trans kids supposed to do? Just sit and wait?
A lot of kids grow out of it.
Well, what's the problem?
A lot of kids grow out of it,
yes,
so you're saying it's a choice. You're saying it's a phase. This woman's coming to New York Pride trying to say, so why are we okay with this conservative influencer trying to say that transness is a choice?
Put words in my mouth. I literally didn't say that.
Why are we just letting this happen in the street? We're a half block away from the Pride Parade, and we're just gonna let this happen?
Yeah, it's freedom of speech. I also didn't say that.
What's the problem with trans people?
If you let me, are you gonna calm down? Are you gonna let me talk? Because you're okay then.
Because you're spreading hate at a LGBT event.
I'm gay.
Joining me now is YouTuber and conservative gay activist Ariel Scarcella. Ariel, were you spreading hate there in New York City, just around the corner from a Pride Parade?
I mean, I was a Pride Parade myself, right? I'm a lesbian. I should be allowed to be there. And I would have never thought that this little hat and 5'1" little old me would have caused such a hectic day. No, I'm just kidding. I knew that was going to cause a hectic day. But it's crazy because New York City is supposed to be the most liberal city in the world, right? This just proves once again what we know, that leftists are not actual liberals, right? In the true sense of the word, which is why I made that video. You know, there was a girl on TikTok that wrote to me and said, listen, we need a day. We need to show people that we are not like these crazy people. We're different. We're just normal gays. And I said, let's do it. She decided to call it Alliance Day, which is the first video you showed on the show. And it's almost funny because the last time I spoke to you publicly like this was 6 years ago when I visited you in Australia. And I was leaving the left then.
Yes.
And now it's just like I'm inviting everyone else to come along. And now we have, you know, we want to celebrate one day. You can be, you know, a gay alliance.
We need you back, Ariel, for Mardi Gras. Next time Mardi Gras is on, you need to be back here. You need to be wearing that cap. And hopefully this time you will have a lot more support, because it must be pretty confronting to have someone like that towering over you, saying you shouldn't be able to express your opinion. Do these crazed activists think your opinion is deserving of violence? Because, I mean, what else do they mean when they say, are we just going to let us say that? Are they going to physically stop you?
I guess, I mean, even if they don't verbally say that they're calling for violence, I think it says everything that I had to hire a bodyguard with me this time around. There are a number of other LGBT people, normal gays, and there are a number of other just regular straight people that have been doing these types of street interviews and getting physically and verbally harassed. Savannah, I forget her last name, but Savannah recently was at like an anti-abortion or a pro-life rally, whatever it was, interviewing people and got punched in the face. Like it's come down to this, which is really sad. So I said, you know what?
Yep, we played that punch.
Yeah, I'm gonna hire a bodyguard.
It is really quite terrifying. You do need a bodyguard, but we have seen this factoring of the LGBT community. It's not just yourself. You've been one of the leaders of it. Where do you think the split is right now? Are the dissenting voices like yourself a small minority, or do you represent a sizable chunk of that community?
I think 6 years ago, there was a very small fraction of us. And I think now, just based on how many views that one video of Alliance Day got, it blew up on every single platform. Just that alone shows me that there's more of us now than way more of us now than before. And I think it comes down to three main issues. It's the leave kids alone debate, the protect women's spaces debate, and the transsexual versus transgender or transsexual versus gender identity debate. So it's basically it basically comes down to biological reality and identity. And a lot of these normal gays like myself are not for any of those three things. Right? We want to leave the kids alone. We want to protect women's spaces, and we believe in transsexualism, but not at the expense of women's spaces and kids. Right? Like it all kind of comes together. And I think the majority of people are over it, to be honest.
Now, the excesses of the trans movement, this obsession you mentioned with exposing children to this ideology, has really changed people's perceptions of the community. I know several trans people who are deeply unhappy about the activists and how they've changed the way many people see them. I think this has actually been terrible for people who identify as trans, who don't want to have anything to do with this activism, but who are now viewed in a political light.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, the majority of us, like we always say, we're normal gays, we're normal trans people. We just want to, like when we said we want equal rights, we wanted equal rights. We wanted to assimilate into society. That's very different than this queer movement that has taken over and you know, basically it's taken over our movement, renamed itself, and it's fighting for everything that we disagree with, which is why we've seen the divorce happening for quite some time now. there's a lot of people popping up. There's, of course, there's Blair White, there's Buck Angel, like all these people. There's Becky Weiss. There's a conservative aunt. I'm sure you've heard of him. Just a lot of normal. I hate saying the word normal, but it's like we really are just like normal people that wanted to integrate into society, and we have those rights now. And of course, the queer activists, on the other hand, are making up all these new identities that they now have to fight for, which aren't even real.
Well, your movement is gaining strength. It's gaining numbers. It's become very much mainstream, and we look forward to talking to you again, Ariel Scarcella. I also want to talk to you about what you've described as the left's war on traditional family values. We'll do that next time. Thanks for your time tonight. Joining me now is President of the Centre for the American Experiment and founder of the popular Powerline blog, John Hinderaker. John, let's start with the White House investigating former President Joe Biden's use of the autopen, with senior administration officials reviewing tens of thousands of documents turned over by the National Archives and Records Administration. But the former president, he's phoned the New York Times and he claims there's nothing improper about the autopen. He told the New York Times he hadn't personally signed the orders, including those last presidential pardons, because there was a lot of them. What do you make of this story, John? Is there anything to see here?
Well, Rita, first of all, Joe Biden got a hold of the New York Times and gave them an interview because they're trying to get ahead of this story. They know it looks bad. They're trying to get their version out in front of the story. And it is ironic that Joe Biden says, well, there were so many pardons and commutations, I couldn't possibly sign them all. There's too many. I think he did grant a record number of pardons. And what his staff says, what the story is that Biden didn't know the names of the individual people he was pardoning. They would talk about people by category. And the story is Biden would say, oh yeah, pardon everyone in that category. And then they'd have a list of, 1,000 people and they'd work the autopen. And the whole process is it's outrageous. And one thing you'll notice, Rita, is that Joe Biden did sign his family's pardons personally. He knew about those pardons and he did sign.
Well, I think that is a tell right there. I think that was a mistake on his part. If you're going to use the autopen, then don't make an exception for family members. Oh, my goodness. I think that's the greatest scandal of modern American history, the fact that there was a president in the Oval Office who was so cognitively impaired that we really don't know who was running the country. Let's go to a story that impacts Australia, with President Donald Trump planning to increase the tariff rate on pharmaceutical imports to the US. Last year, Australia exported around $2.1 billion of medicinal and pharmaceutical products to the US, but that may change with President Trump determined to see manufacturing return to the US.
Pharmaceuticals will be tariffed probably at the end of the month, and we're going to start off with a low tariff and give the pharmaceutical companies a year or so to build, and then we're going to make it a very high tariff, because we got to move them in. Look, there's two ways you do it. You make money, or you have them move here so they don't have to pay the tariff. Those are the two ways. The pharmaceutical companies are moving back to America where they should be.
John, it may not be great for Australia, but he's not the president of Australia, and he wasn't elected on an Australia First platform. He was elected on an America First platform, and this is precisely what he campaigned on, returning manufacturing to the US.
So, Rita, part of what's going on here is that we import a huge percentage of our pharmaceuticals, especially our generics, from China. And that's just unacceptable. We can't be in a situation where the Chinese, at best a rival, if not an adversary of the U.S., are in a position to cut off our pharmaceuticals. And yet that's the position that we're in. And I think to some extent, Australia might be a little bit caught in the crossfire here. I don't mind Australia producing drugs for the U.S., but I don't want to rely on the Chinese for it.
No, well said. And I've got to say, our government hasn't exactly covered itself in glory in dealing with the US. We've got an ambassador who's on record saying terrible things about Donald Trump, and the Prime Minister and some of his ministers also. So we are, I think, we're in the freezer at the moment. Now, let's move on to the Jeffrey Epstein saga. Earlier today, Attorney General Pam Bondi said there's no change to her position on Jeffrey Epstein after President Trump suggested she could release more files. Do you see this as an issue, John, that could fracture Trump's supporter base? And why aren't we seeing more information released?
Well, I hope not, Rita. I think we should start with the fact that Jeffrey Epstein was a Democrat. He contributed to Hillary Clinton, Chuck Schumer, a bunch of other Democrats. The only politician that he's known to have had a relationship with that was at all significant was Bill Clinton. So it's ironic that this hot potato is now dropping in the lap of a Republican administration that had nothing to do with Jeffrey Epstein. But what I think is going on here, Rita, is that there are voluminous investigative files related to Epstein. Now, investigative files are never released. They aren't released, and they shouldn't be. They're full of false accusations, of hearsay, of people telling the police things that might be embarrassing about their observations of a crime or whatever, but are not criminal. And it's important that people be able to talk to the police without worrying that anything I say might show up in the newspapers in a couple of years. So I think that's what's happening. Yeah, there are files, but they are the kind of investigative files that are just never released.
But there was so much evidence. Jeffrey Epstein was known to have cameras in so many rooms in his mansions and on the island, and there was just all this evidence that was captured at some point, and you expect to see something out of that. You expect to see some of the influential, rich, powerful people that he had in his orbit exposed, but to have nothing, I think I can understand why there's a lot of people who are unhappy about it. On Jeffrey Epstein, former Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett has denied that he worked with Israeli intelligence, that he was a part of Mossad in any way. John, what do you make of that? I'm not sure that even that is going to convince too many people who are interested in this case. Again, there's so much mystery surrounding Jeffrey Epstein's rise to incredible wealth and influence. That's something that we're still not 100% clear on.
Well, Rita, maybe somebody else knows something that I don't, but I'm not aware of any evidence whatsoever that Jeffrey Epstein had anything to do with the Mossad. That is something that was just tossed out there by Tucker Carlson with no supporting evidence whatsoever. And as far as I know, there isn't any. So if somebody's got some evidence that somehow links Epstein to the Israeli government, I'd like to see it. But as far as I know, it doesn't exist.
Now, it's evident that the president doesn't care much about this issue. He sees it as an irritation, really, a distraction from the major issues. I think that's a mistake, but you can understand because he's dealing with some fairly major issues. And one of the things that he wants highlighted is his incredible success on the border. Have a look at this.
Border data for the month of June highlights the lowest month of encounters ever recorded. Customs and Border Protection says it is the second month in a row of zero releases of illegal aliens into the U.S., compared to almost 28,000 releases in June of last year.
John, the data around illegal immigration is quite astonishing. I don't think anyone expected that these policies, Trump's policies, would end the crisis in a matter of weeks, but that's what's happened, and those historically low numbers are holding.
Rita, this is an unbelievable success. And you think back to the latter days of the Biden administration where they were saying, oh, it's impossible. You can't close the border. We need new legislation. The Republicans won't pass new laws. Well, it turns out, as we all suspected, Rita, that all we needed was a president who actually wanted to do his constitutional duty and enforce the law. And once they started enforcing the law, guess what? No more significant level of infiltration by illegal immigrants. And now they're having great success in convincing illegal immigrants to self-deport. they're doing things like the alligator Alcatraz, publicizing that facility, obviously for the purpose of inspiring people who are here illegally to decide they'd be better off to go back to their home countries where they're citizens.
It's been quite incredible. There's some polling coming out saying that the deportation program is not as popular as it once was. I've got my doubts about those polls. We'll check in on them next week because they do seem to jump around the place. But we always love your insights. John Hinderaker, thank you so much for your time tonight.
Thank you, Rita.